learning target 5. We're still using the sum and difference identities for sine, cosine, and tangent. So all those identities on the front page of your note sheet still apply. Again, you don't have to memorize any of those because they're all on the right formula sheet. You just know how to use them. So in this case, we're finding exact values. Still, that means no decimals, just fractions. If there's radicals, there's radicals. We simplify what we can. All right? So, and then it tells you that your angles, X and Y, are in the first quadrant. That's good, because that means when we're doing these individual pieces we're going to do in a second, we don't have to worry about signs as much, because if it's in the first quadrant, those should be positive. Okay? All right, so here is an example of what's happening. They're asking us to find sine of the difference of two angles, X and Y. I don't know what X and Y are, and I really just don't care. All right? So in the first part of learning target 5, they gave us an angle measure. They said find cosine of 165. We need to add two angles together, so we had to use the unit circle. In this case, it's just X and Y. It's two arbitrary angles. And then they give us specific information to work towards getting the answer, but it has no bearing on the angle. Like, it does not matter what X and Y are. At no point does that matter in this question. Okay? So if I'm going to find the difference between X and Y, that means I have to use this identity up here. Okay, if we're subtracting, that means we follow the symbols in the bottom. So that means I need to have sine of X minus Y, and that'll equal sine of X times cosine of Y minus cosine of X sine of Y. That's what that formula said. I just changed the alphas and betas to X's and Y's. Right? Okay. Well, they give us some information. They tell us that sine of X is 4/9 and sine of Y is 1/4. So we have that piece and that piece. It's very tempting, if you don't think about the identities, to just say, oh, well, it's just 4/9 minus 1/4, because it says sine of X minus Y. But remember, the identity does not say that. So you have to think about all of the pieces that are involved. So we have the two sine pieces, but we're missing the two cosine pieces. That makes sense to everybody. All right. So this is where learning target 2 comes into play. All right, because we have to go back. We have to find cosine X, and we have to find cosine Y so we can stick all those into the identity. All right. So if we are given sine of X, then how can I find cosine of X? I can learn in target 2. If I have sine of X, how can I find cosine of X? You can use math. Uh-huh. Yeah. Way to go, Elise. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, right? So we're going to use that identity to find the missing piece. So to find cosine X, we have sine squared X plus cosine squared X equals 1. I know that sine of X is 4/9, so we put that in for sine X, and then we square it. And we're just going to solve for cosine X. So 4/9 squared is 16/81. Then we're going to solve for cosine, so we have to subtract 16/81. And that should be 65/81. If you want to check my math, you can use your calculator. And I'll take the square root. And we get the square root of 65/9. Well, that's learning target 2. We do the so we need cosine of Y. We do the same thing. We just have to use the sine Y piece that we had to find cosine Y. I told you guys, learning target 5 is just extensive amounts of work.
So it's knowing your identity.
Yes. Yes. So for cosine Y, we're going to do the same thing. Sine Sine y is 1/4 though. It's really important that you use the right variables on this so you know which piece you get. If you don't write, I know some of you guys don't like to write the x's and the y's and the thetas and all that jazz. Yep. So you need to, on this one, because that way you know which piece you have. Do you see why that's important? Oh my gosh. So I get 1/16 plus cosine squared y equals 1. I need to subtract 1/16, so we get 15/16. And then we take the square root. So cosine y is the square root of 15/4. Still not done though. We're almost done this time. All right, so now I have all of the pieces I need for the identity. I have sine x, I have cosine y, I have cosine x, and I have sine y, right? So I just need to go back and put them all into the identity and simplify. So yeah, sine x is 4/9. Cosine y is the square root of 15/4. Cosine x is the square root of 65/9. And sine y is 1/4. So I just fill it in the identity. We're going to multiply fractions. Multiplying fractions is easy because you just multiply straight across. We're going to combine it into one fraction. So you have 4 square roots of 15/36. I'm not simplifying the 4 because we're going to make it one fraction in a second. Minus the square root of 65/36. And we'll just combine it. They already have a common denominator. Mm-hmm. Where'd the what come from? That's the exact value for this problem. Again, you have to know the identities for calculus. So you have to know how to use them. Exact value means like no decimals and everything. That's just the common way of writing things in math.
Okay, so like later on, right, we're going to know how to solve these, and then something else, what we're going to put in.
We aren't. Yeah, exactly. I mean simplified and in fraction form, no decimals. Because there's no rounding involved. Exact means there's no rounding at any point. Questions about where things came from? Did we answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. They denote the identity, find the missing pieces, and then substitute everything in.
That wasn't that bad.
There's a lot of work, but it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as 3 and 4.
See? Could have been worse. All right. Can I erase all this? All right. One more example.
Then what?
Then I'll let you work on stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to have a quiz over Learning Target 5 and test over all of the unit, but okay. All right. On the second one, we're finding the sum tangent of x plus y. So if you look at the identity, that means we're following the symbols at the top. And in this identity, we need tangent of x and tangent of y. That's the only two things we need. Tangent x, tangent y. They don't give us either of those, though. Because why would they do that? That would be too easy. No, they didn't feel like it, so they didn't give us either of them. So there are multiple ways to get to tangent of x and tangent of y. I'm going to show you what I think is a short way. Then you could have probably worked it out the longer way. I'm just trying to save some steps in the intro. Yeah, we're going to work with those. So this first one they give us is cosecant x. And so I could see where some of you guys would change cosecant to sine by doing the reciprocal and then doing sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, and you get cosine. But then to get tangent, you have to do sine divided by cosine. So you can do that. It just takes a lot of steps. I'm instead going to do cotangent squared plus 1 equals cosecant squared. Because then at the end, I've got cotangent. I can just flip it over and have tangent. Again, the other way would work. It would just take longer. fine.
So you're gonna make yourself work more if you don't know all this.
If you just don't think of it initially, it's just going to be a few extra steps. It'll be work fine. It's not a big deal. There you go. All right. So if we fill this in, we have cotangent squared x plus 1 equals 5/3 squared. These are going to work out really nicely because they're from Pythagorean triples, but most of the ones in the book aren't. So no, I'm just saying they're not always going to get like these nice, neat little fractions. Like on the last one, we had square roots in it. It was still fine. But these are going to be nice, neat little fractions with no square roots. So we get 25/9. We need to subtract 1. So we're subtracting 9/9, which is 16/9. And if you take the square root, we get 4/3. But then we need tangent, so we just flip it over. Give us what on it? Oh, I don't know. I mean, the last one wasn't. Oh, I should just give you all the steps from the test so you don't have to do anything?
No, like the last part, right? And then you can work that out, and then what do you get here?
Right. Right. See, I've done that in the past where I like do the work and I leave in blanks, but then people don't know what they do because they skip steps. They have no idea what I'm talking about.
Well, see, that's on them. This is us.
But that means you have to like follow my work step by step where you might have done it differently and that ends up being a whole nother problem. So I don't do that.
I think you should try it again, second time's the charm.
All right, so we have tangent of x, we need tangent of y. So they give us cosine. So again, you could do cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1. And you could get sine and then do sine divided by cosine and get tangent. That works. I'm going to use tangent squared plus 1 equals secant squared because I know that I can flip cosine over and have secant. I'm just trying to save myself time. These already take long enough, as you guys have told me several times, so just trying to save some steps. So we have 169/25. We got to subtract 1. So that's 25/25. So that's 144/25. And you got to take the square root. So that's 12/5.
Now you have 10.
You have tangent of x, which is one angle, and tangent of y, which is another angle. Everyone with me? Anyone have any questions so far? Right, 2 different angles. That's why I said it's important you write down your symbols. Because if you don't write down your letter, like your variables, you'll know which angle you're talking about. I know, that's why I made that point specifically for you. Make sure you write down the variable. Okay, so we use the identity. I'm not going to write this all down, so I'm just going to fill it in from up there because I don't want to rewrite it again. So tangent of x plus y equals tangent of x, 3/4, plus tangent of y, which is 12/5, over 1 minus tangent of x, 3/4, times tangent of y, which is 12/5. Yeah, you need lots of space. That's what we got to do right here. That's what that is.
Oh,
Wow. Oh,
Okay, we on the same page now?
well, why are we having this?
so we do not get that thing that has
Oh,
tangent up there.
I see it.
You do.
You get that?
Yes. Yeah, the ones, these identities on this page from Monday in the purple boxes. You get those. I'll show them to you. They're on the red pre-calculus sheet.
Don't get the line target too.
Right, all the ones you're supposed to memorize so far, you still have to memorize.
What's that yellow sheet?
The yellow sheet is statistics, so you don't need that. So we're back here. So we good? Everyone's on. You don't have to memorize this thing up here. That's complicated. I'm not gonna memorize it. I'm not gonna make you guys memorize. So you just gotta fill it in. All right. In the numerator, you just have a common denominator to add the fractions. You can use your calculator. You get a common denominator of 20, and so instead of doing 15 plus 48, you should get 63 over 20. But you can check that if you would like. 4 3/4 plus 12 is?
Hold on. 4, 6, 3, 5.
It's 3 over 4. Sorry. The 4 over 3 part was the cotangent part.
63 over 20 on top.
Yeah. All right. In the denominator, you multiply fractions, you get 36 over 20. Because 3 times 12 is 36, and 4 times 5 is 20. 1 minus 36 over 20 is 20 over 20. Again, you can use your calculator. I'm just don't want to type it all in right now. So you get negative 16 over 20 in the denominator. Because 20 minus 36 is negative 16. If you're dividing fractions, you just multiply by the reciprocal. So you get negative 63 over 16. Wish. Questions on where I got negative 63 over 16? Is it about learning target 5? Okay, then hold on a second. So the first part of learning target 5, you have to use the unit circle to find angles that add up to a certain amount. In the second half, they give you specific information, and you have to find the extra information to fill out the identity. So it's using the same identities, just different stuff given to you. And lots of work, but I told you that ahead of time. I warned you about that ahead of time.
Learning target 6 is
Learning target 6 isn't as much work. Learning target 6 is proving identities like we did in learning target 4, but they're all based on this, so you have a starting point. We're doing learning target 6 tomorrow. All right, any questions on learning target 5?